He ignored every call from home until the last one came with his daughter's scream. When he walked in and saw what she was doing, everything inside him broke. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? United States, Canada, UK, Australia, Jamaica? Atlanta mornings always started the same for Michael Reed. A mug of black coffee, his laptop glowing before sunrise, and the faint giggle of his 6-year-old daughter echoing down the hallway. Emma Reed, his whole world, loved sitting on the counter as he packed her lunch. "Extra peanut butter, Daddy," she'd always remind him with a grin that could melt the hardest soul. Michael had spent the last 4 years rebuilding his life after losing his wife, Caroline. He worked 12-hour days as a real estate developer, not for the money, but for Emma. He wanted to give her the world. So when Vanessa Carter came into their lives, it felt like fate. She was polished, sophisticated, and beautiful in a way that seemed to draw attention wherever she went. Her voice had warmth, her smile disarmed even Michael's colleagues, and for the first time in years, he felt seen. Vanessa was everything his busy, grieving life had been missing, or so he thought. The first night she stayed over, she brought Emma a shiny red hair ribbon. "You'll look just like a princess," Vanessa said sweetly, tying it in her curls. Emma had smiled politely, but later whispered to her father, "Daddy, she smells like Mommy's perfume, but it's not the same." Michael brushed it off, chuckling softly. "She's just trying to be nice, Pumpkin. Give her a chance." Vanessa moved in 2 months later. The house gleamed. She organized everything, hired new cleaning staff, and redecorated Emma's room in soft pink tones. Michael felt like life was finally settling into something normal. But Grace Miller, the housemaid who'd worked for the family since Caroline's passing, noticed what others didn't. She saw how Vanessa's smile would freeze when Michael wasn't looking, how her tone turned sharp when she spoke to Emma. It began subtly. A toy accidentally tossed in the trash, a bedtime story abruptly ended because Emma wasn't grateful, a bowl of cereal taken away because you need to learn some manners. Grace caught the shift instantly. She'd raised 3 children of her own and had seen that quiet fear in kids' eyes before. One afternoon, while Michael was on a business call, Grace heard Vanessa's voice echo from the kitchen. "If you don't stop whining, I'll throw that teddy bear in the fireplace." Emma froze at the counter, clutching her stuffed bear tightly, tears brimming. Grace stepped in quickly, heart pounding. "Miss Vanessa," she said gently, "she's just a child." Vanessa turned, eyes narrowing. "And you're just the help. Remember that." That night, Grace debated calling Michael. She even picked up the phone, but what would she say? Would he believe her? She decided to stay quiet, for Emma. Days passed. Vanessa's sweetness returned whenever Michael was home. She'd cook elaborate dinners, laugh at his jokes, pour his wine, and insist Emma say grace louder so Daddy knows we're a happy family. Grace watched, silently praying that the truth would reveal itself before something worse happened. Then came Friday. Michael had an important meeting downtown. He kissed Emma on the forehead before leaving. "Be good for Miss Vanessa, all right?" She nodded, her little fingers clinging to his sleeve. "Don't go, Daddy," he smiled, kneeling down. "I'll be back before bedtime." Grace noticed Vanessa standing by the doorway, expression blank, almost irritated. By afternoon, Grace found Emma sitting on the staircase, eyes red. The bowl of soup on the table had gone cold. Vanessa was pacing in the kitchen, talking on her phone. "She spilled it on purpose. Ungrateful brat. You try living with someone else's child and see how long your patience lasts." Grace stepped closer, holding her phone behind her apron, recording quietly. When Vanessa noticed her, the woman's tone softened instantly. "Oh, Grace, just talking to my friend. Emma had a little accident." Grace gave a polite nod, though her heart ached. That night, when Michael called to check in, Grace tried again. "Sir," she said softly over the phone, "I think you should talk to Emma when you get back." Michael sighed on the other end. "Grace, please don't tell me there's another spilled milk incident. Vanessa's doing her best, I promise." "Sir, it's not just—" But before she could finish, she heard the soft beep of a disconnected line. He'd hung up. Grace lowered the phone, her chest tightening. In the next room, Emma whispered, "Did Daddy say he's coming home soon?" Grace knelt down, stroking her hair. "He will, sweet girl. He loves you very much." Outside, thunder rolled in the Georgia sky. Inside, Grace prayed that this storm would pass before it destroyed what little peace remained. If you were in Grace's shoes, would you keep quiet or confront the father, even if it risked your job? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
The weekend breeze in Atlanta carried the scent of rain as Michael left for a 2-day business trip to Savannah. He hugged Emma tightly before stepping into his car. "I'll bring you something special, okay?" he promised, kissing her forehead. "Promise?" she whispered. "I pinky swear," he smiled, linking fingers with hers. Vanessa watched from the porch, arms crossed, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. As soon as the car pulled out of the driveway, her posture changed. She turned, letting the smile fade like a mask peeled off. "Grace," she said sharply, "I don't want that child sitting in the living room all day. Keep her busy, quietly. I'm having friends over this evening." Grace blinked. "She's only 6, Miss Vanessa. Maybe she can play in the yard." "I said quietly," Vanessa cut in, voice low but edged with venom. Grace nodded, lips pressed tight. She found Emma coloring by the window. "Sweetheart, let's go read in your room for a bit, okay?" Emma nodded obediently, clutching her crayons. "Miss Vanessa doesn't like my colors. She said they make her head hurt." Grace's stomach twisted. "You just keep drawing, baby. You make the world brighter." That night, Vanessa hosted her friends, 2 women who laughed too loud and drank too much wine. Grace worked silently, clearing dishes and trying to ignore their giggles. But the sound that caught her ear was Emma's faint sniffle coming from the stairs. "Emma, what are you doing here?" Grace whispered, hurrying over. "I'm hungry," Emma murmured, clutching her doll. "Miss Vanessa said dinner's for grown-ups." Grace's hands trembled. "You didn't eat?" Emma shook her head. "She said I was being punished for not saying hello to her friend right." Grace led her quietly to the kitchen and warmed some soup. But halfway through feeding Emma, Vanessa's heels clicked across the tile. "Well, isn't this sweet? Teaching her to disobey me?" Grace froze, spoon in hand. "She was hungry, Miss Vanessa. Mr. Reed wouldn't want her—" "Mr. Reed isn't here, and when he is, you'll tell him how grateful you are for this job. Do you understand?" Her tone was ice, but her eyes burned with something darker, envy. Grace said nothing. Vanessa walked away, her perfume lingering like poison in the air. The next morning, Emma's doll lay torn apart in the trash. "She said it looked dirty," she whispered to Grace. Grace could barely hold her composure. She reached for her phone and called Michael again. It rang twice. No answer. She tried once more. Voicemail. "Sir, please," she whispered into the message. "I don't want to cause trouble, but something is wrong. Emma needs you." Later that afternoon, Vanessa walked into the living room holding a white dress, the one Emma's late mother had sewn before she passed away. "This old thing?" she scoffed. "It's falling apart." Emma's eyes widened. "No, that's Mommy's dress." Vanessa smirked. "Your mommy isn't here anymore, sweetheart." And before Grace could stop her, Vanessa ripped the fabric down the middle. Emma let out a small broken cry. Grace rushed forward. "That's enough," she shouted, startling even herself. "You've gone too far." Vanessa turned, her face twisted. "You forget your place, Grace." "I know my place," Grace said, her voice trembling, "and it's protecting this child." For a moment, the two women stood inches apart, Vanessa's fury against Grace's quiet strength. Then Vanessa grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Grace knelt beside Emma, wrapping her arms around the sobbing girl. "Shh, it's okay. Daddy will fix this." But even as she said it, her heart sunk, because she'd said the same thing last week, and he hadn't listened. When Michael finally called that evening, Grace answered quickly. "Sir, I really need to talk. Grace, I'm in the middle of dinner with a client. Can we talk later?" "Sir, please," she whispered. "It's about Emma." "Grace," he sighed, "Vanessa's been trying so hard. Don't make it harder for her. You know Emma misses her mom. She's sensitive. We just need to give her time." Her eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Reed, it's not Emma who needs time." But once again, he ended the call. That night, rain pounded against the windows. Grace tucked Emma into bed, but the little girl refused to let go of her hand. "She's going to throw away Mommy's things," Emma said quietly. Grace sat beside her. "Not if I can help it." "Will Daddy believe you?" Grace hesitated, then forced a smile. "He will, sweetheart. He loves you." But deep down, she wasn't sure anymore. Outside the door, Vanessa stood listening, her eyes cold, her hand clutching a half-finished glass of wine. "Loves her," she muttered under her breath. "We'll see how long that lasts." And as thunder cracked over the Atlanta skyline, the monster behind Michael's perfect life was only just beginning to show her claws. The next morning in Atlanta began gray and restless, a sign of the storm that was brewing inside the Reed household. Michael was 200 miles away in Savannah, reviewing contracts in a sleek conference room. His phone lay face down on the table, silenced. He'd promised Vanessa he'd trust her more, and he was trying, but a quiet unease had been sitting heavy on his chest all morning. Back at home, Emma sat curled on the floor of her bedroom, a coloring book untouched beside her. Grace was in the kitchen, making pancakes in the hope of bringing a smile to her face. But the peace didn't last. "Grace?" Vanessa's voice rang out, sharp and shrill. "Where is she?" Grace flinched. "She's in her room, Miss Vanessa. She hasn't eaten yet." "Of course she hasn't. She never does anything right." Grace turned off the stove, heart pounding. Something in Vanessa's tone chilled her to the bone. She followed quietly, standing in the hallway as Vanessa pushed open Emma's door. "There you are," she hissed. "Why didn't you clean your toys like I told you?" Emma's small voice trembled. "I was going to, I just—" Vanessa snatched the coloring book from her hands, tearing a page down the middle. "You think you can do whatever you want because your daddy spoils you? Please don't." The sound of the slap echoed through the hallway. Grace gasped, rushing forward. "Miss Vanessa, stop!" Vanessa froze, realizing Grace had seen it. "She needs discipline," she snapped. "You wouldn't understand. You just work here." "Discipline?" Grace's voice shook with fury. "You hit a child!" Vanessa sneered. "If you cared about this job, you'd keep your mouth shut." Grace didn't move. She went straight to her phone. "I'm calling Mr. Reed." "Go ahead. He never listens, does he?" Grace's fingers trembled as she dialed. 1 ring, 2, 3, voicemail. She tried again. Straight to voicemail. "Pick up, Michael," she whispered desperately. Emma sat sobbing softly in her arms. "Is Daddy coming?" Grace hugged her tight. "He will, sweetheart, he will." For a moment she considered calling the police, but how could she explain? There were no visible injuries, no witnesses but her and a terrified little girl. So she did the only thing she could. She started recording. She slipped her phone into her apron pocket and turned the camera on. Vanessa was pacing the hallway, muttering to herself. Ungrateful, both of them. I give everything to this house, and all I get is attitude. Miss Vanessa, please. Quiet, she snapped. You don't tell me how to handle my family. Grace's voice cracked. You don't have a family here. You have a little girl who's scared of you. Vanessa's eyes flared. You think I wanted this? A man with a dead wife and a clingy child? Please, he's lucky I stayed this long. Grace's blood ran cold. She didn't know whether to scream or pray. And then, as if fate demanded proof of everything she'd feared, Vanessa turned to Emma. You want your daddy? Let's call him. She grabbed the house phone, dialed, and pressed speaker. The ringing filled the air. Grace's hands shook as Michael's voicemail kicked in again. Vanessa's smile twisted. See, he doesn't even want to talk to you. Emma sobbed harder, covering her ears. Grace couldn't take it anymore. She pulled the phone from her pocket and redialed herself. The first call didn't go through. The second rang once, twice, and then... Grace? Michael's voice finally came through, weary. I'm in the middle of something. Can this wait? No, sir, please. You need to come home now, Grace cried. It's Miss Vanessa. She's hurting Emma. You have to come now. He frowned, running a hand through his hair. Grace, I told you Vanessa just has a strong personality. You're overreacting. In the background, a sound pierced through. Faint, muffled, unmistakable. Emma's scream. Michael's blood ran cold. What was that? Grace's voice broke. That's your daughter. The phone went silent for half a second, then a chair scraped back. I'm on my way, he said, his voice low, deadly calm. The tires screeched as he tore out of the parking lot. Rain hammered the windshield, blurring the world into streaks of gray. He didn't even know what he'd do when he got there. He just knew he couldn't breathe until he saw his little girl again. Back at home, Vanessa was yelling, her anger spiraling. Stop crying, you're pathetic. Grace stepped between them. Don't touch her again. You're fired, Vanessa snarled. I don't care. You can't fire me before he gets here. For the first time, fear flickered across Vanessa's face. And then, the front door slammed open. Rainwater dripped from Michael's coat as he stepped inside, chest heaving, eyes blazing. Vanessa froze mid-step, her hands still raised. Michael. He looked at Emma, tear-streaked, trembling, hiding behind Grace, and something inside him snapped. Don't, he said, voice shaking with rage. Don't you dare say another word. For the first time in her life, Vanessa was speechless. Grace stood silently, her phone still recording, her prayers finally answered.
The rain outside had slowed to a drizzle, but inside the Reed home, a storm still raged. Michael's breath came in heavy bursts as he stood frozen in the doorway, his gaze darting between Vanessa, Grace, and his trembling daughter. Emma's tiny hand clung to Grace's skirt, eyes wide and red from crying. Michael, Vanessa began, her voice unnaturally calm, you've got this all wrong. She's trying to make me look like a monster. Step away from my daughter, he interrupted, his tone dangerously quiet. Vanessa hesitated, then took a step back, forcing a trembling smile. She was just acting out, Michael. You know how emotional kids can get. Grace has been undermining me since the day I moved in. Enough, he barked, eyes narrowing. I heard her scream. That stopped her. Grace gently guided Emma to the couch. It's all right, sweetheart. Daddy's here now. Michael's chest tightened at the sound of that word, Daddy. How many times had he missed it? The calls, the texts, Grace's warnings, Emma's fear. Michael, she's manipulating you. You know how kids can twist things. She just needs boundaries. Boundaries? He snapped. You call this discipline? He pointed toward the broken doll on the floor, the torn coloring book, and the shredded pieces of his late wife's dress scattered in the corner. Vanessa's lips trembled for the first time. She disrespected me.
"No," he said sharply, his voice trembling with restrained rage. "You disrespected my family." Grace stepped forward, holding her phone. "Mr. Reed," she whispered, "I recorded everything today. You should see this." Vanessa's eyes widened. "You did what?" But Grace ignored her. She opened the video, the soft sound of Emma's crying filling the room, followed by Vanessa's cold, venomous words, "Your mommy isn't here anymore." The footage showed it all, the slap, the shouting, the cruelty. Michael's face went pale. He stood completely still, his jaw clenching as he watched the evidence of his blindness play out. By the time the clip ended, Vanessa was sobbing, her perfect mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Michael, please, it wasn't what it looks like. I lost my temper." "You think that makes it better?" he snapped. His voice broke then, raw and ragged. "You hurt my little girl. You—" He stopped himself, turning away as emotion swelled in his throat. Grace took Emma's hand and led her gently upstairs. "Come on, sweetheart. Daddy needs a minute." The moment the child was out of sight, Michael turned back to Vanessa. "Pack your things now." Vanessa stared at him in disbelief. "You're choosing her over me? After everything I've done for you?" Michael's laughter was bitter, empty. "Everything you've done for me? You broke my daughter's heart. You made her afraid in her own home. You did that to me." She shook her head, desperate. "You'll regret this. You're just upset." "No," he cut in, "I regret not listening sooner." Her expression hardened. "You'll never find someone like me again." Michael stepped closer, his tone icy. "That's the point." She grabbed her bag, muttering curses under her breath, and slammed the door behind her. For the first time in months, the house was silent. Michael leaned against the wall, head in his hands. The reality of it all sank deep. Every ignored call, every excuse, every moment he'd brushed off Grace's concern. He'd failed the one person who needed him most. A soft voice broke through his thoughts. "Daddy?" He looked up. Emma stood on the stairs, holding her torn doll. Michael's eyes filled. He crossed the room, dropping to his knees before her. "I'm so sorry, baby. I should have listened. I should have protected you." Emma wrapped her small arms around his neck. "It's okay, Daddy. I knew you'd come." That broke him completely. He held her tight, tears finally falling, whispering over and over, "I'm here now. I promise I'm here." Grace stood quietly by the doorway, her eyes glistening. When Michael looked up, he met her gaze with gratitude that words couldn't express. "Grace, I owe you everything." She shook her head gently. "You don't owe me anything, sir. Just love that little girl the way her mama would have wanted." The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows, the first warm light to touch that home in a long while. Michael called the office and took time off indefinitely. "Family emergency," he said simply. Vanessa never returned, though her absence felt less like a loss and more like a release. The walls seemed to breathe again. That night, Emma fell asleep in his arms for the first time in months. Michael brushed her hair back and whispered, "No one will ever hurt you again." Outside, the world moved on, but inside, a father had finally woken up.
2 weeks had passed since that stormy night, but for Michael Reed, the echo of his daughter's cries still haunted his sleep. Each morning, he woke up early, just to make Emma's favorite pancakes, with chocolate chips in the shape of little hearts. It was his quiet way of saying sorry, again and again. Atlanta's skyline gleamed outside the window, but Michael wasn't thinking about real estate deals anymore. His meetings could wait. His money could wait. Right now, his heart only had one project: rebuilding his daughter's trust. Grace stayed on at the house, helping when needed, but she'd quietly begun giving father and daughter space. Still, she was there in the background, a steady, gentle presence, the kind that keeps a home grounded even after chaos. "Daddy, can you come to my class next Friday?"
Emma asked one morning, swinging her little legs at the breakfast table. Michael smiled, flipping a pancake. Wouldn't miss it for the world, sweetheart. What's the occasion? It's Family Appreciation Day, she said proudly. We get to tell everyone who we love the most. Michael's throat tightened. For a moment, he couldn't speak. Then I guess I better wear my best shirt, he said softly. When Emma left for school, Michael sat in silence for a long while. He finally picked up his phone, scrolling through old messages, dozens of missed calls and voicemails from Grace he had ignored. The guilt was heavy, but it wasn't hopeless anymore. He walked to the backyard, where Grace was hanging laundry in the warm Georgia sun. Grace, he said quietly. She turned, smiling kindly. Morning, Mr. Reed. Michael, he corrected gently. After all you've done, you can call me Michael. Grace chuckled. All right then, Michael. What's on your mind? He took a deep breath. I wanted to say thank you for protecting my daughter when I didn't, for staying when things got ugly. I don't know how I'll ever repay that. Grace's expression softened. You don't have to repay kindness, Michael. You just have to pass it on. He nodded, his eyes glistening. You ever think maybe you were meant to be here? Like, maybe God sent you? Grace smiled faintly. I stopped questioning why God sends me places. I just try to listen when He does. That Sunday, Michael and Emma went to church for the first time since his wife's funeral. As the choir sang, Emma clung to his arm, whispering, Mommy would be happy today. And for the first time in years, he believed her. Over the next few months, things slowly healed. Emma laughed more, slept through the night again, and started drawing pictures, this time with all three of them, her, Daddy, and Miss Grace, standing under a big yellow sun. Michael hung one of those drawings on his office wall. This, he told his business partner one day, is the best investment I ever made. By summer, Grace had quietly handed in her resignation. Emma doesn't need me as much anymore, she told him one afternoon, folding her apron neatly. She's got her father back. Grace, you're family now. You don't have to leave. She smiled warmly. And you're a good man, Michael. But part of being family is knowing when it's time to let go. You'll both be fine. He didn't argue, maybe because he knew she was right. On her last day, Emma gave Grace a small handmade card. It had 2 stick figures holding hands and a heart between them. The words read, "Thank you for saving me." Grace cried quietly as she hugged her. You saved yourself, sweet girl. I just helped you hold on until your daddy came home. After she left, the house felt emptier, but it wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. Months later, as autumn leaves covered the yard, Michael found himself sitting on the porch, watching Emma chase bubbles through the sunlight. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real, honest, safe. And sometimes, that's all a man can ask for. One evening, as he tucked Emma into bed, she looked up and whispered, Daddy? Yeah, baby? Are you gonna get married again? He chuckled softly. Maybe one day, but only if she loves you as much as I do. She giggled, snuggling under her blanket. That's impossible. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. You'd be surprised, sweetheart. As he turned off the light, he looked back one last time, at his daughter, safe, sleeping soundly. He exhaled deeply, whispering into the quiet room, Thank you, God, for giving me another chance. Outside, the stars shimmered over Atlanta, the city alive and buzzing as ever, but inside that small home, peace finally lived again. If you were Michael, would you forgive yourself for not seeing the sign sooner? Or would that guilt follow you forever? Let me know your thoughts below. Your story might help someone else heal.